The sky above Illyria shimmered with colors Daniel Rice had never seen before. Purples and blues danced across the horizon, reflecting off the glass-like towers of the alien city. His boots clicked on the polished platform as the Solace, the human envoy ship, touched down. The hum of the engines faded, leaving only the whispers of the wind and the distant calls of strange birds. Daniel felt a shiver run down his spine. He had been here before, but not like this. Not as a visitor, not as a human ambassador seeking peace. He walked through the main gate of the palace, his uniform crisp, his hands empty of weapons. The Illyrians were waiting. Thousands of them, standing silently along the wide corridors, their silver eyes glinting in the sunlight. They stared at him, curious but wary, as if trying to measure every thought in his mind. He kept his head high, walking with steady steps, though a part of him remembered the battlefield. He remembered screams, fire, and the cold weight of fear. At the center of the grand hall stood Princess Leora. She was tall and graceful, with long silver hair that shimmered like moonlight. Her eyes were the color of the Illyrian sky, sharp and wise beyond her years. Daniel paused for a moment, studying her. He had seen leaders before, soldiers, even generals, but something about her made him stop. There was power in her stance, but also vulnerability. And as their eyes met, the room seemed to go silent. Then it happened. Leora's smile vanished. Her lips parted slightly and her hand froze in midair. Her body stiffened as if she had seen a shadow from the past. The guards behind her shifted uneasily. Daniel felt a strange pull in his chest, a flicker of recognition that made no sense. Why would she react this way to him? They had never met before, at least not in his memory. Princess? A guard whispered, leaning toward her. But she didn't answer. She just stared at Daniel, her expression a mixture of shock and confusion, almost like she had recognized something buried deep inside him. Daniel's stomach tightened. He had trained to face enemies, to stare death in the eye, but this was different. The court remained silent. The murmurs of the spectators faded into nothing. Daniel felt the weight of every gaze, every judgment pressing down on him. Yet he could not look away. Her eyes seemed to pierce through him, reaching for something he could not remember, something important. Finally, without a word, Leora turned sharply and walked away. Her robes trailed behind her like liquid silver. The sound of her footsteps echoed through the hall, leaving Daniel standing alone. The court guards looked at each other, confused, uncertain how to act. Daniel remained still, unsure whether he had done something wrong or if he had just uncovered a memory long forgotten. Later, a palace servant guided him to his quarters. The corridors were lined with glowing crystals, their light reflecting off the polished floors. Daniel's mind raced. Why had she stopped? Why had her eyes widened like that? He tried to recall every mission, every battle, every human he had ever saved, but nothing matched the feeling he had just experienced. That night, he could not sleep. He stared at the Illyrian moons from his window, their light casting silver shadows across the room. His thoughts drifted back to Leora, to the fear, the shock, the unmistakable recognition in her gaze. I've seen her before, or she's seen me before, but how? A soft knock on the door broke his thoughts. Captain Rice, a low voice said. The princess wishes to speak with you. Daniel's heart skipped a beat. He followed the servant through the winding corridors to the palace garden. Silver flowers glimmered in the moonlight, filling the air with a soft, sweet scent. There she stood, her back straight, her hands folded, her gaze fixed on the horizon. When she finally turned toward him, her eyes glistened with unshed tears. You look exactly like him, she whispered. Daniel's heart froze. Like who? The answer would change everything. Daniel blinked, struggling to understand her words. Like who? He repeated, his voice careful, almost soft. Princess Leora's lips trembled. A human soldier, she whispered, her voice barely audible. During the war, he saved me. Daniel froze. His mind raced. The Illyrian-Terran War had ended years ago, but memories of battles, explosions, and losses still haunted him. You were there? He asked, unsure if he was ready for the answer. She nodded slowly, her silver hair glimmering under the moonlight. I was a child. Our transport was ambushed. My guards, they died protecting me, and then a human soldier appeared from the fire and the smoke. He carried me through the battlefield. Daniel felt a cold ache in his chest. Could it really be him? Could he have forgotten? Leora's voice shook. He was brave, Daniel. He shielded me even when he was hurt. He smiled. He told me I would grow up to bring peace between our people, and then he disappeared. I never knew his name. Daniel's fingers brushed the silver petals of the flowers in the garden. His hand shook. Something deep inside him stirred like a forgotten chord being struck. Memories. Faint, fragmented flashes flickered behind his eyes. Explosions. Screams. A small, frightened girl reaching out to him. A weight in his arms. Fire. Pain. But the images were incomplete. He could not remember the full story. The truth hid behind a curtain of time and war. Where did he go? Leora asked softly, her eyes searching his face. I tried to find him after the battle, but he was gone. I thought I would never see him again. Daniel swallowed hard. He wanted to tell her it was me. I was there. But the words felt heavy, trapped by years of forgotten memories. He did not know how to explain the gap in his mind, the blank years that separated the past from the present. I think I need to see the records, he said finally. I need to check something. Leora's eyes flickered with hope. Records? Daniel nodded. About the battle. About the soldier who saved you. Later that evening, he entered the archive room of the palace. Holographic files floated in the air, displaying war reports, soldier logs, and rescue missions. The room smelled faintly of metal and ozone. Daniel scanned each record, each name, searching for anything that could link him to this memory. And then he found it. Operation Emberfall, the mission where human troops had been ambushed near the Illyrian capital. One report detailed a rescue. A small child alone trapped among burning debris saved by a wounded soldier. The report mentioned a scar on his face. And then, slowly, his memory returned in pieces, carrying the girl, dodging fire, falling wounded, and losing consciousness as the world went black. Daniel staggered back, gripping the console. His chest felt tight, his vision blurred. He was the soldier. He had saved her. All of it, the fear, the fire, the promise. It had happened to him, and he had forgotten. Meanwhile, Leora waited in the garden, pacing softly. When Daniel returned, his face pale, his eyes wide with realization, she knew something had shifted. He looked different now, not as a stranger, but as someone who belonged in her past. I remember now, he said quietly, his voice trembling. It was me. I saved you. Tears spilled down her cheeks. She took a hesitant step forward, reaching out her hand. You came back, she whispered, voice breaking with relief and disbelief. Daniel looked at her, the silver glow of her hair framing her tear-streaked face. For the first time, he felt the weight of what had been lost and what had been found again. A bond, forged in war and courage, stretched across time and memory, connecting them in ways words could not fully express. For a long moment, they simply stood there. The wind whispered through the silver blossoms, carrying the quiet magic of the Illyrian night. Two souls, separated by years and pain, had found each other again. But even as relief filled the air, Daniel knew the challenges were not over. Their reunion was only the beginning. Somewhere the shadows of war still lingered, waiting for the right moment to strike, and yet, for now in that silver garden under the glowing moons, a spark of hope was born. The morning sunlight spilled across the palace courtyard, casting golden light on the crystal towers of Illyria. Daniel walked beside Princess Leora, his steps cautious, his mind still heavy with the revelation of the past. She was quiet at first, her silver hair glinting in the sun, her eyes distant yet full of emotion. Daniel wanted to speak, to say something comforting, but words felt small compared to the weight of what they had both just discovered. I never knew, Leora whispered finally, her voice soft. I thought I'd never see him again, and now it was you all along. She looked at him, searching his face for answers, for proof, for the man who had saved her life so many years ago. Daniel reached out slowly. I don't remember everything. Not at first. But now it's coming back. I remember carrying you, the fire, the chaos, your small hand in mine. I remember promising to protect you, and then losing everything after the blast. His voice broke as the memories washed over him. Leora took a deep breath, steadying herself. You saved me, Daniel. Twice now, it feels like. Her lips curved into a small, sad smile. I grew up learning to survive, to lead, but I never forgot him. And now I see you were my protector all along. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The breeze whispered through the silver trees, and the distant sound of Illyrian city life reminded them that the world continued, even after such profound revelations. Daniel wanted to tell her everything, to explain all the emotions he had felt during the war, the fear, the hope, the endless determination to protect life even in the darkest moments. I always believed that humans were capable of cruelty, Leora said softly, almost to herself. But seeing what you did for me, I don't think I can ever believe that again. Her gaze met his, steady and sincere. You showed me what humans are capable of, Daniel. Bravery, loyalty, compassion, all of it. Daniel felt a warmth rise in his chest. For years he had fought, survived, and witnessed horrors that made him question humanity itself. But now, hearing her words, he realized that hope had not been lost. Not for her, not for Illyria, not for his own people. Suddenly, a commotion in the distance pulled their attention. Soldiers shouted, alarms rang, and the hum of engines filled the air. Daniel and Leora exchanged a tense glance. Something was happening. Trouble, and they would have to face it together. We should move, Daniel said, taking her hand gently. Whatever it is, we'll face it together. Leora nodded, gripping his hand firmly. Despite the fear in her eyes, there was determination too. The same determination she had shown as a child, when she had survived the war because of him. Now, as a young leader, that determination had grown, strengthened by knowledge, courage, and the bond they shared. As they walked toward the source of the disturbance, Daniel reflected on the past. Memories that had been lost to him for years now guided his actions. He remembered how humans had always fought not just for survival, but for what was right, for what was just. And now he realized that same drive had saved Leora once, and it could save Illyria again. They reached a balcony overlooking the city, where Illyrian guards confronted a group of strangers, armed, dangerous, and determined to create chaos. Daniel's heart tightened. The moment he had been fearing was here. But this time he would not be powerless. Not for Leora, not for her people, and not for the promise he had made so long ago. Leora looked at him, her eyes unwavering. "Do you trust me?" she asked. Daniel smiled faintly, a mixture of relief and resolve. "Always," he said, and in that moment, standing side by side, human and princess, protector and saved. They understood something profound. Courage, loyalty, and humanity could bridge worlds, heal wounds, and create bonds that even time and war could not destroy. The battle ahead would be difficult, but together they were unstoppable. The city of Illyria was alive with tension. The sun had barely risen, casting soft light on the crystal towers, but the streets below were filled with nervous guards and citizens peeking from windows. Daniel and Princess Leora stood together on a high balcony, looking at the disturbance in the distance. Armed men had infiltrated the city, radicals who opposed peace with humanity. Their presence was a reminder that even now old hatred lingered. Daniel's jaw tightened. He had faced enemies before, but these attackers were different. They were Illyrians who wanted war, who could not forgive or forget. "We need to act quickly," he said, his voice calm but firm. "If they reach the palace, innocent lives could be lost." Leora's eyes were sharp, focused. "Lead me," she said. Her hands gripped the railing, and though fear lurked in her gaze, determination burned brighter. Daniel felt a pang of admiration, and something else, a protective instinct he could not ignore. She was no longer the small child he had saved. She was strong, capable, and ready to fight for her people. They moved swiftly through the corridors, passing holographic banners and glowing statues, soldiers parting respectfully as they went. Daniel noticed how the palace seemed almost alive, aware of the danger, and he felt the weight of responsibility settle even heavier on his shoulders. He had saved her once in the chaos of war. He would not fail again. Reaching the main courtyard, Daniel and Leora saw the attackers clearly for the first time. They were fast, organized, and well-armed. The Illyrian guards were struggling to hold them back. Daniel's eyes scanned the battlefield instinctively, calculating the risk, the distance, the chances of survival. And then he saw it, a young guard about to be struck from behind. Without thinking, Daniel leapt forward, pushing the boy out of the way just as a plasma blade sliced through the air. "Daniel!" Leora shouted, running to his side. "You can't take all the risks." He shook his head, sweat beading on his forehead. "I promised once. I won't let anyone hurt you, not today, not ever. Her eyes softened. She understood now, more than ever, the depth of his commitment. The bond between them was no longer just memory. It was alive, powerful, and real. They fought together, moving as a team. Daniel used strategy and instinct, covering Leora as she directed her guards, forming a wall of defense that seemed almost impenetrable. Despite the chaos, Daniel's mind drifted to the past. He remembered the child he had carried, the fear in her eyes, the sound of explosions and fire. That day he had sworn he would protect her no matter what. And now, years later, he realized that promise had never left him. It had guided his actions, shaped his choices, and given him purpose even when he had forgotten it. Leora glanced at him mid-battle, and for a brief moment their eyes met. Words were unnecessary. Trust, courage, and an unspoken understanding passed between them. They were not just human and princess. They were allies, friends, and something more, two souls connected across time, war, and memory. Finally, the attackers were driven back. The Illyrian guards regrouped, forming tight formations, their morale bolstered by the courage and skill of their leaders. Daniel and Leora stood in the courtyard, breathing heavily, faces streaked with sweat and dirt. Around them, Illyria began to heal from the immediate danger. Leora touched Daniel's arm gently. "You've saved me again," she said, voice low but steady. "I don't know how to thank you." Daniel shook his head with a small smile. "No thanks needed. This is what humans do. We protect. We fight for those who cannot fight for themselves. And sometimes we fight for those we care about most." The wind blew softly through the courtyard, carrying the scent of silver blossoms and the faint warmth of sunlight. Daniel looked at Leora, seeing not just the princess, but the life he had once saved, the hope she now represented, and the future they could build together. In that quiet moment after the chaos, Daniel understood something profound. Courage was not just about battle. It was about protecting, trusting, and believing. And humanity, his humanity, had brought him here, to Illyria, to her. The shadows of the past had returned, but they had also revealed the strength of the present. And for Daniel and Leora, that strength was just the beginning. The palace had returned to an uneasy calm, but Daniel could feel the tension lingering in the air. Illyria was a beautiful planet filled with light and life, yet beneath its glittering surface old wounds and secrets festered. He and Princess Leora walked through the hallways side by side, the silence between them full of unspoken thoughts. "I need to tell you something," Leora said at last, her voice soft but firm. "There's more to what happened that day during the war." Daniel stopped, turning to face her. "What do you mean?" She hesitated, glancing down at her hands. "The soldier who saved me. He didn't just rescue me by chance. My mother, the queen, had intelligence about human soldiers. She knew some of them were brave, loyal, capable of compassion even during war, and she believed that one soldier, the one who would save me, could change the future of our worlds." Daniel frowned, confusion mixing with the growing realization in his chest. "You're saying—" "She planned it." Leora shook her head quickly. "No, not exactly. She predicted that someone like him would appear. Someone who could remind us that peace was possible, that hatred could be overcome. And then you did. You were the soldier. You saved me, and you gave us hope without even knowing it." Daniel's heart pounded. He had fought in many battles, but he had never imagined that his actions could carry such meaning. That his humanity, his courage, his instinct to protect, could echo across years and change the fate of an entire planet. He looked at Leora, her silver eyes shining with a mixture of tears and determination. "And now?" he asked softly. "What do we do now?" She reached for his hand, gripping it tightly. "Now we finish what you started. The radicals, the ones who still cling to war, they won't stop. They'll try to undo what we've worked for, and we can't let that happen. Not again." Daniel nodded. He felt a fire ignite within him. The same fire he had felt when carrying her through the battlefield years ago. The fire fueled by hope, courage, and humanity was stronger than any weapon. He understood now that saving her once had been fate, but protecting her and her world now was a choice he would make without hesitation. They moved together to the palace command room. Maps of the city and the surrounding regions floated in holographic projection. Leora's advisors were gathered, tension etched on their faces. But when they saw Daniel standing beside the princess, something shifted. Hope flickered in their eyes. The humans had fought many battles, and this man, what was no ordinary soldier. He carried courage, strategy, and a willingness to fight for what was right. Leora spoke clearly, commanding the room with authority. "We will not allow fear and hatred to rule Illyria. Daniel and I will lead our people, and together we will stop those who wish to destroy our peace." Daniel studied the city through the hologram. Streets, towers, and civilian areas were vulnerable, but with Leora's guidance and his experience they could form a defense. He felt a calm determination settle over him. Years of war had taught him fear and loss, but it had also taught him one thing. Humanity was not defined by hatred, but by courage, by the ability to protect, and by the willingness to hope. For a long moment, Daniel and Leora stood together looking out over Illyria. The city gleamed like a jewel under the sun, fragile but beautiful, much like the bond they now shared. He remembered her as a child, frightened and small, and now saw her as a leader, strong, unyielding, and capable of guiding her people to peace. "You saved me once," Leora said quietly, almost to herself. "And now, we'll save them all." Daniel squeezed her hand, a silent promise passing between them. "Together," he said. "No matter what comes, we face it together." The wind whispered through the palace towers, carrying the scent of silver blossoms and the warmth of sunlight. In that moment, Daniel understood the truth of why the princess had stopped cold when she first saw him. He had been part of her past, yes, but he was also part of her future. And the bond they shared, forged through courage, sacrifice, and humanity, was unbreakable. The shadows of the past had revealed a hidden truth. Even in war, acts of humanity could shape destinies, create hope, and inspire change. And Daniel knew, deep in his heart, that he and Leora were living proof of that truth. The night fell over Illyria like a velvet curtain, but darkness did not bring peace. Shadows moved through the streets carrying weapons and malice, striking fear into anyone who dared to step outside. Daniel and Princess Leora stood together on the palace balcony, watching the city below. The radicals had returned, more organized and determined than before. The weight of responsibility pressed heavily on both of them. "They've grown bolder," Daniel said, his voice calm but edged with tension. "They're not just attacking the city. They want to make a statement, to show Illyria that peace is a lie." Leora's eyes glimmered with determination. "We cannot let them succeed. Not tonight, not ever. My people, your people, we have fought too hard for this peace." She straightened her posture, regal and fearless. "We fight together." Daniel nodded. He had survived countless battles, faced enemies more ruthless than these, but the thought of failing Leora, of letting fear triumph, ignited a fire he could not ignore. "Stay close," he said, and together they descended into the courtyard. The radicals had broken through the outer defenses, chaos spreading through the streets like wildfire. Daniel moved with precision, instincts honed from years of combat guiding him. He blocked a plasma strike aimed at a guard, grabbed a falling civilian, and ducked just in time as a blast tore through the wall behind him. Every step, every decision was measured, yet fluid, almost effortless. Leora, though not a soldier, directed her guards with intelligence and authority. She used the environment to their advantage, collapsing a bridge to slow the attackers, guiding civilians to safety, and coordinating counterattacks with precision. Daniel watched her for a brief moment, awe mingling with respect. She was no longer the frightened child he had saved. She was the leader Illyria needed. Then he saw her, a group of radicals closing in from the south trying to flank the palace. Without thinking, Daniel sprinted forward, placing himself between the princess and the attackers. A plasma blade struck him in the side and pain shot through his body, but he did not falter. He raised his weapon, deflected another strike, and pushed the radicals back. Leora's eyes widened in fear, but Daniel caught her gaze. "I've got you," he shouted, gritting his teeth. "Stay behind me." They fought side by side, a human and a princess united by courage and trust. Guards rallied behind them, inspired by their bravery. Every move Daniel made, every command Leora gave, showed what humanity and leadership could achieve when combined. Finally, the tide began to turn. The radicals, seeing their plan crumble, retreated into the shadows, leaving Illyria battered but intact. Daniel sank to one knee, breathing heavily, blood trickling from his wound. Leora rushed to his side, hands trembling as she supported him. "You did it," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "You saved me. And everyone." Daniel smiled faintly, pain and relief mingling. "No," he said, shaking his head. "We did it. Together." The courtyard was silent except for the labored breathing of the survivors and the distant hum of city life returning. Leora looked at Daniel, tears streaking her face. "I don't know how to thank you for everything. For saving me twice, for risking your life." He touched her hand gently, smiling through the exhaustion. "You don't need to thank me. It's what humans do. We protect even when the odds are against us. And sometimes, we protect not because it's our duty, but because it's the right thing to do." The wind swept through the courtyard, carrying the scent of silver blossoms and the faint warmth of the night air. For a moment, the chaos and bloodshed faded, leaving only the quiet strength of trust, loyalty, and courage. Daniel realized something profound. The bond between them, forged in war and solidified in this fight, was unbreakable. And as Illyria slowly healed under the first light of dawn, Daniel and Leora knew one thing with certainty. Their worlds, once divided by fear and hatred, had a chance to stand together. Humanity had arrived, not just as soldiers but as protectors, as partners, as a symbol of hope. For the first time in years, Daniel felt the weight on his chest lift slightly. He had survived war, saved a princess, and now, he had helped her people believe in the impossible. The shadows of the past had tested them, but the light of courage, trust, and humanity had triumphed. And their story, one of hope, bravery, and unbreakable bonds, was only just beginning. The first light of dawn bathed Illyria in soft gold, painting the crystal towers with warmth and hope. The radicals had been driven back and the city began to stir again. Daniel and Princess Leora stood on the palace balcony, overlooking the streets below. The destruction from the night's attack was visible, but it was minor compared to what could have happened. Relief and exhaustion mingled in their hearts, but more than anything there was a sense of triumph, a fragile, precious victory. Leora turned to Daniel, her eyes shining with tears and gratitude. "You saved me." "Again," she said, her voice trembling. "I thought I knew what courage was, but now I see it in you." Daniel shook his head, a small smile on his lips despite the ache in his side. "It's not just me," he said quietly. "It's humanity. We fight, we protect, we believe in what's right, even when hope feels impossible. That's what led me here. To you, to Illyria, and to this moment." Her gaze softened, and for a long moment, they simply looked at each other. It was a silence full of meaning, understanding, connection, and an unspoken promise. They had both been shaped by war, by fear, and by loss, but now they were united not just by memory or circumstance, but by choice, courage, and trust. The palace doors opened behind them, and the queen approached, her expression a mixture of pride and relief. "Princess Daniel," she said, her voice steady, "the peace treaty is ready. Both our worlds have agreed, no more war, no more bloodshed. Because of what you've done, because of the hope you've shown, they have chosen to believe in humanity." Daniel felt a lump rise in his throat. He had spent years fighting battles, seeing death and destruction, wondering if humanity could ever rise above its own violence. And now, looking at Leora, at her people, at the shining towers of Illyria, he realized that hope was not just a dream, it was real. It had always been there, waiting for someone brave enough to protect it. Leora stepped closer to him, her hand brushing against his. "You were my protector once," she said softly, "and now, you've given my people a future." Daniel looked at her, his heart full. "I didn't do it alone. You've been strong, brave, and wise. You've inspired them, inspired me. Humanity did its part, yes, but your courage made it possible too." The sun rose higher, bathing them in warmth, and the city below seemed to shimmer as if celebrating the new beginning. Citizens emerged from their homes. Illyrian guards saluted, and even the smallest children looked to the balcony with awe and curiosity. The world was waking up to something extraordinary, a chance for peace, a future built on trust, and a bond between two worlds that once seemed destined for endless conflict. Daniel thought of the child he had saved years ago, the frightened little princess in the chaos of war. He thought of every battle, every risk, every moment that had led him here, and he realized that every act of courage, every choice to protect had mattered. It had shaped the future. It had shaped this very moment. Leora squeezed his hand and he met her gaze. "Promise me," she said, her voice steady, "that no matter what comes, we will protect this peace. Together." Daniel smiled, a warmth spreading through him that no battle could ever destroy. "I promise," he said. "As long as I live, I will protect this world. And you." The wind carried the scent of silver blossoms across the balcony, and the sunlight sparkled like fire on the towers. In that moment, humanity had not just survived, it had shone. And Daniel knew deep in his heart that this was only the beginning. The princess who had once stopped cold at the sight of a human now stood beside him, no longer fearful, no longer frozen, but confident, strong, and ready to lead. Together they faced a new dawn, one of peace, hope, and the enduring power of humanity. And somewhere in the quiet of that moment, Daniel understood the truth. A single act of